Greetings. Thank you everyone for attending today's WebEx section. Our topic today is NEC ExpressCluster XR3 Enhancements. Just a reminder for everyone that today's section will be recorded and will be available on NEC Corporation of America's website. Also, all lines will be muted, so if you have any questions, please type your question in the Q&A panel on the right side of the screen, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Our presenter today is George Wu. George is our product manager of ExpressCluster at NEC Corporation of America. George, if you're ready, I will turn the presentation over to you.
Great, thank you, Julia. Welcome everyone for attending this session today. Today we're going to be talking about the new release of NEC's ExpressCluster, high availability and disaster recovery software. I will get started. So today, first with the agenda. So for those of you who may not have a lot of background on ExpressCluster, I will provide a short introduction of the product itself before I move on to explain some of the key enhancements in the new major release. And then I will also explain some of the key solutions that are enabled by ExpressCluster, and then we'll take questions after that. Without any further delay, I will get started. So NEC ExpressCluster is a integrated application and data protection and recovery software suite. It provides in a single software package that provides continuous monitoring of applications and data and protection of both. So in case there's any problems, such as hardware, software, or network, or site failures, it can then automatically recover to a standby site or server running the same application with the same data very quickly, usually within minutes. It's a very proven solution. It's been on the market for over 10 years and has over 10,000 installations. It's primarily targeted at the volume platform systems running Intel-compatible processors, 64-bit as well as 32-bit, running Windows and Linux typically. However, more recently, support for virtualization platforms such as VMware ESX has also been added. The primary target application has been transactional system, typically running on a database server, such as Microsoft SQL Server. And it's been introduced to the North American market for over 5 years now, and has won some of the awards that's shown on the slide there. So ExpressCluster has a very specific target market. What we wanted to clarify is that it's not really like your typical data backup software solution. ExpressCluster is really focused on very fast recovery with minimum loss of data and application information. So that's the market segment we consider as business critical. And more specifically, there are two key concepts related to this market. So that's first one is the recovery point objective, which specifies how much data loss can be tolerated. Typically, for ExpressCluster customers, they do not want to lose data more than a few minutes, if anything, from before the point of failure. The second concept is the recovery time objective. So this talks about how quickly the system needs to recover to continue processing of user requests and transactions. For ExpressCluster target market, this is focused on recovery within minutes. So our target profile of a system is systems that need to recover within minutes without losing any data, or at most a few minutes of data loss. And the reason why there's a growing demand for this market segment are really four key areas. First one is really the rising cost of business impact of downtime. So the typical problems caused by downtime are business service disruption that can basically disrupt the revenue stream, for example, or it can cause significant degradation of system performance, which can cause a lot of customer frustration. And thirdly is, if when key business process systems are down, typically manual systems would be much less efficient, or manual processes that would be much less efficient. That can cause loss in productivity and profit, for example. So here's on the left-hand side, there's a table that came from Gartner's research looking at the typical downtime cost per hour for some of the major industries. So it's quite significant, and that's one key reason driving the demand for solutions like ExpressCluster. Second area is the increased system failure risk due to really the popularity of a usage of more commodity hardware platforms, which is inherently less robust than the old mainframe type of systems. And also software complexity has been increasing due to various demands of business needs. And that can cause more problems because software inherently has bugs, such as memory leaks and things like that can cause problems. And more recently, the consolidation based on virtualization technologies is also increasing risks of failures, because instead of having one server per application workload, now you have multiple applications on a single server, and when a server problem occurs, it impacts multiple workloads that can have greater impact on the customer business. And third area is really disasters. So both man-made as well as natural disasters have been, for various reasons, been increasing in frequency in recent times. So things like terrorism attacks, as well as earthquakes and floods and storms, have all played an important factor in driving the demand for disaster recovery solutions like ExpressCluster. And lastly, regulatory compliance. This has been especially important in the North American market, in the U.S. market, where government regulations like HIPAA for healthcare and Sarbanes-Oxley for financial services are requiring a clear way and quick way to recover access to important information that is resilient against disasters that can cause the entire location to become unavailable. So these are some of the key reasons. And this is the area that's really well suited for ExpressCluster type solutions. So ExpressCluster consists of several product editions. The main product editions are listed on this slide. ExpressCluster WAN on the right-hand side is the flagship product edition that provides the ability to mirror data across wire networks in real time, as well as monitor and recover those the protected application data across wide area networks separated by hundreds or even thousands of miles. And then we have ExpressCluster LAN product. This is a product targeted at branch office and remote office locations where there is typically no extensive IT infrastructures, but may still have critical applications running on a standalone server. So ExpressCluster LAN provides synchronous data mirroring of internal stored disk storage, so there's no SAN array required for ExpressCluster LAN. And it also provides the ability to monitor and recover applications and data quickly. So this is a very low-cost solution for critical applications typically found in a branch office or remote office settings. And then we have the ExpressCluster SAN edition product on the left-hand side. This is a product targeting the more enterprise data center environment where there are many servers, typically server farms, and there's typically established enterprise IT infrastructure that includes shared storage networks and extensive networking in place. So ExpressCluster SAN is a great solution for that environment because it allows you to enable high availability for those systems in a very efficient way through its ability to configure fewer standby servers for multiple production servers. So you can have 10 production servers, but only have 1 or 2 standby servers that can take over for any one of the 10 production servers. So it's very, again, cost-effective and efficient way to enable high availability in data center environments. So those are the key product additions targeting those 3 specific areas we talked about. So overall, ExpressCluster focuses on really providing value in 3 key areas. One is performance. So ExpressCluster is able to provide very fast recovery with minimal data loss. So it aims to achieve very high RTO as well as RPO capability. And second area is really usability. So ExpressCluster provides unified management and monitoring of the protected application as well as data. So this is in contrast to other solutions that may require integration of multiple tools from multiple vendors to achieve the same result. And also ExpressCluster provides true server identity virtualization capability, so that enables much easier, more practical way of using ExpressCluster to mitigate both planned downtime due to maintenance as well as unplanned downtime due to failures of hardware, software, or network. And lastly, ExpressCluster also provides very high total cost of ownership benefits because it's able to support all the common IT infrastructure, including industry standard PC compatible servers, standard editions of operating systems, as well as key applications that are much lower cost than the specialized versions some vendors require for high availability. And also it has the ability to support very low bandwidth network environments and over wide area networks that enables lower cost for operations as well. So these are the key capabilities and benefits for ExpressCluster overall. So that's a very quick overview of the ExpressCluster. Next, we'll move on to the presentation on the core part of the presentation on the enhancements in a new major release, in Release 3. So for ExpressCluster Release 3, there are many very important enhancements. But before I get into the specific enhancements, I just want to providing background on how ExpressCluster enhancements are done in what area. So typically, ExpressCluster enhancements focus on 3 areas. One is platform support. So again, as I mentioned before, that ExpressCluster is mainly focused on volume platforms. So as new volume platforms emerge, so it has been mainly Windows and Linux, but more recently the virtualization platform is an example of new volume platform that has emerged, and ExpressCluster has added support for that. And going forward, any new volume platform that emerges will also likely be supported. The second area is the core high availability and disaster recovery features and functions. So this includes things better application monitoring capabilities, or data mirroring or data protection capabilities would fall under this category. And third area is application and target application and services support. So ExpressCluster is very focused on providing integrated support or streamlined support for key applications that customers run on the volume platforms. So as I mentioned, a key area where ExpressCluster has worked very well in is supporting transactional systems, applications, and database servers in that area. And going forward, virtualization workloads is an example of a new area that ExpressCluster will be providing continuous enhancement to enable better and easier support and deployment for those types of workloads. Okay, with that, and now move on to talk about the new enhancements in the new ExpressCluster 3.0 release. So in the new major release, there are 4 enhancement areas. One is in data mirroring. So data mirroring is the function that's available in the ExpressCluster WAN and ExpressCluster LAN editions of the product. So this is the ability to transparently mirror data from one system to another system in a way that's transparent to applications. So it's very easy and robust way to protect data. And second area of enhancement is usability. So ExpressCluster has provided a setup wizard for configuring and setup of systems. But in release 3, there's been some further enhancements in here that makes it even easier for new users to get up to speed on the product. And third area is WAN support. WAN support is especially important for the WAN edition of ExpressCluster product. This is mainly targeting disaster recovery solutions. And lastly, there's been quite a few virtualization enhancement support. As I mentioned, virtualization is a newer area where new workloads are emerging, so ExpressCluster has been enhanced to better support those situations. So moving on, in the data mirroring area, so one of the major enhancements in Release 3 is the ability to quickly set up initial mirroring of data protection. So in previous releases, ExpressCluster used to copy all data of the target data volume that users want to protect. So as shown in this slide here, in previous versions, if you have 100 gigabyte target data volume you want to protect, ExpressCluster would need to initially copy that 100 gigabyte or 1,000 gigabyte of data to the standby system, and that can take quite a bit of time. And one of the issues is that typically when a new system is set up, there isn't really much actual data on those data volume initially. So this complete copy of disk capacity is not the most efficient way. So in release 3, ExpressCluster has been enhanced to only copy data that is actually on the data on the disk itself. So in the top part of the slide here, so if there's initial disk with a 1,000 gigabyte capacity, but no data is actually on there, ExpressCluster will skip over most of the copying of the data. So instead of doing it in a few hours, it can then complete the initial setup mirroring in a few minutes. So it's a very dramatic speed up compared to previous versions. And for a system that are deployed, so in second case scenario in the bottom of the slide here, you may have a system that has maybe 1,000 gigabyte disk, but it only has 500 gigabyte of data on the primary system, and after some usage, and there may be a need to do a resynchronization with a standby system. So again, in that case, previously ExpressCluster would require resynchronization of the entire 1,000 gigabyte capacity. With the new release, it would only require resynchronization of the 500 gigabyte of actually used disk capacity. So again, that cuts the resynchronization time in half in that specific case. So this is a very important enhancement that dramatically shortens the initial deployment time as well as restoration time for later usage. Second major enhancement for data mirroring is the addition of support for multiple data mirroring networks. So in previous editions, ExpressCluster is able to mirror data across a single data link, network link between the primary server and the secondary server. So that is a shared network link, regardless of how many sets of data mirroring protection exist on the system. So in some cases, that can cause unintended contention or impact of data mirroring performance due to when there are multiple disks to be mirrored. And also when that single data network link is disrupted, then the data mirroring is disrupted until that mirroring network can be recovered. So in a sense, that is less resilient to network disruption. With the new release, ExpressCluster can now support a dedicated network for each data disk that needs to be mirrored, and this can be up to 8 sets within a single system. So that means ExpressCluster can effectively achieve much higher aggregate data network capacity from data mirroring purposes by 8 times. All right, and also for each disk that is mirrored, ExpressCluster can also support a backup network path to provide even more higher level network disruption resiliency. And so that means, as shown in this slide here, data mirroring network would normally go over the primary network link, but when that network is disrupted for whatever reason, then ExpressCluster will automatically redirect the mirroring traffic to the backup network link for that particular mirror disk. So in total, you can actually have up to 16 separate network links specified and configured for each system in the new release. So this is a major enhancement that enhances the total data mirroring capacity as well as the resiliency for each mirrored disk. And third enhancement is related to asynchronous data mirroring mode. So this is capability available in the ExpressCluster WAN edition. So ExpressCluster WAN edition supports asynchronous data mirroring, especially suited for less predictable or more bursty kind of network environments, sometimes found in wide area network or internet environments. So ExpressCluster Release 3 has added the further enhancement to allow compression of asynchronous data mirroring. So that way you can further reduce the network bandwidth usage when asynchronous data mirroring is used. So this is especially useful for situations where you want to use asynchronous data mirroring for large amounts of data that are not necessarily tier 1 priority data, but still important, and that you want to protect on a best effort basis based on available network bandwidth. So this adds additional efficiency in the ability to support that type of data mirroring needs. And fourth area is ExpressCluster also now supports the ability to work with on Windows operating system the snapshot capability provided by the volume shadow copy mirroring capability enabled by ExpressCluster. So Windows provides volume shadow copy to allow snapshots or point-in-time copies of data that can be later restored to, for example, recover from unintended operator errors or virus-caused data losses, which are not problems that would be addressed by ExpressCluster data mirroring specifically. So by combining data mirroring in ExpressCluster and the volume shadow copy capability, you can then mirror the data snapshots provided by volume shadow copy to a standby server. That way, when there is a problem, basically any problem that either damages or destroys the primary data set, the standby data mirror would have both the latest production data that's been mirrored by ExpressCluster, as well as the snapshot data that's been stored by volume shadow copy. So you can then actually also recover to a point-in-time copy of data even after the primary data is no longer available. So this is something that really enables even more comprehensive data protection and recovery capability. Now, moving on to usability area of enhancements. So ExpressCluster Release 3 provides almost a brand new setup wizard, if you will, that features the ability to automatically discover the various possible settings that's available on a given system. So in the past, ExpressCluster required users to enter various information such as IP addresses of different network links and interfaces. And for new users, that is sometimes more error prone. So with the new release, ExpressCluster is further reducing the risk of those types of errors by automatically discovering available interfaces, available disks, etc. So users only need to pick from a drop-down list instead of having to type in potentially incorrectly a long string of information such as IP address or disk path, etc. So this is a very important usability enhancement that's available in Release 3. And some additional enhancements is the merging of the operational interface and the configuration interface in ExpressCluster. So ExpressCluster has provided a web-based management console that provided two interfaces, basically two separate panels for monitoring and operation compared to configuration. So with the new major release, everything has been merged into one pane, a single pane of management. So that means you can there's now a menu drop-down item you can use to easily switch between operation management interface and configuration management interface. So again, it eliminates the need to switch between different management windows within ExpressCluster. So this is a further enhancement that makes it easier to use and operate ExpressCluster. Now moving on to wide area network support. So ExpressCluster WAN has many features and capabilities to support deployment of a comprehensive disaster recovery solution. And one area that it has focused on is the ability to support systems that reside in different locations that could be hundreds or even 1,000 miles apart, and they reside on different IP network infrastructure with different network addresses and potentially different network services provided by different servers. So one of those key services found in many environments is the domain name servers that basically maps server names to IP addresses. So in many environments, customers will have actually different name servers in different locations. So when there is a recovery action failover performed, it's sometimes necessary to also update those name servers to redirect traffic from one server to another. So that way, client systems can connect to the same host name and be redirected to the appropriate server after a recovery operation. So in Release 3, ExpressCluster now supports multiple independent dynamic name DNS servers. So ExpressCluster will automatically update multiple servers. In the past, we would only be able to update a single DNS server. So that is potentially not a practical solution for some customers. So with Release 3, it can now support multiple servers at potentially at different locations. That way, whenever ExpressCluster switches application data from one system to another, the appropriate name servers will be updated automatically. Again, this makes it easier to deploy ExpressCluster, requires less changes to some customers' environments to deploy an automated disaster recovery solution. So it's a major enhancement for those types of environments. It makes it even more flexible to support more customer environments. Next, we'll move on to virtualization enhancements. So ExpressCluster has been able to support deployment in virtual environments in previous releases. However, there was no specific setup, wizards, or configuration support in GUI interfaces for those types of deployments. In Release 3, the GUI wizards has been implemented. So this chart here basically shows instead of having to script the protection of virtual machine workloads, ExpressCluster can now be configured to protect virtual machine workloads using the GUI wizard. So this can significantly reduce the amount of time required during setup time. The scripting capability is still available. So for more customized settings, the scripting is still available for users to to use. So now with release 3, it has both a GUI wizard that makes it easy to set up basic protection, but also still offers the scripting capability for more customized environments. Another new feature is the ability to integrate virtual machine level or guest level protection with the hypervisor level protection. So ExpressCluster can be deployed on both hypervisor level, such as directly on Hyper-V virtualization platform, to protect all virtual machines as individual workloads. It can also be deployed in the virtual machine themselves to provide more granular monitoring and support at the application level, which is only available inside each individual virtual machine. So with the new release, ExpressCluster is now able to actually detect problems at the hypervisor level. For example, disruption of storage network at the hypervisor level, and then automatically notify ExpressCluster deploy within the virtual machine to trigger a fast failover to a standby virtual machine on a different virtualization host. So this is now easily done with the new release. There's basically a simple checkbox to enable this integration. So this enables very fast detection as well as recovery for virtualized environments. And third, enhancements. This is key enhancements for managing virtual machine workloads, where ExpressCluster can now automatically try a non-disruptive failover that's based on the workload migration capabilities in the virtualization platforms themselves. So, for example, in Hyper-V, there is the quick migration capability, and in vSphere or VMware, there is the live migration capability. So ExpressCluster will now can be configured to first try a live migration or quick migration to avoid any disruption of virtual machine workloads when there's a problem detected. And if that doesn't work, then it will fall back to the standard ExpressCluster recovery capability by restarting the virtual machine on the standby servers. So this is what we believe to be a very unique capability. That's the first in the industry for this type of solution, and it enables the ability to recover with minimum disruption of the services supported by virtual machines. And next one, ExpressCluster Release 3 also implements greater level integration with virtualization platform management tools. So it's specifically for VMware. It now has greater integration with the vCenter management system that comes with the VMware Hypervisor environment. So through the new integration, you can now manage ExpressCluster workloads from ExpressCluster management interface, and it will when you do make a change to your interface, it will automatically synchronize the status seen by the vCenter environment management, and vice versa as well. So if you live migrate in vCenter to a different server, ExpressCluster will detect that change and adjust its internal tracking appropriately. So again, this makes it more flexible again and easier to manage ExpressCluster high availability within a VMware environment. And lastly, ExpressCluster has also implemented a new feature called Dynamic Failover. What this means is that ExpressCluster 3 does not require a fixed standby server configuration. So you can now identify a server workload as a primary server, but then you can have a pool of multiple servers where failover can take place, and you don't need to specify which one of the available servers should take over. You simply need to specify a pool of servers, and then ExpressCluster will then dynamically determine which server in a pool is in the best state or condition to take over for the primary server when there's a failure. So this slide here shows one primary server on VM1 running VM1, and when there's a problem on server 1, ExpressCluster will determine the best server by looking at the existing workload on the available servers. So for example, server 2 has 2 virtual machines running already, so that workload is already pretty high compared to the other servers 3 and 4, then it would not take that one. And then it would also look at server 3 and determine there's one virtual machine running, but there's also a component failure on that server, so it's not the best candidate. Then it will move on, look at server 4, and it would determine that since it has only one workload, virtual machine running, and there's no other warnings of failures at the component level, that would be the best server. So in this case, it would dynamically determine server 4 as the target server for failover. So this is a new feature that enables, again, less maintenance, ongoing maintenance for ExpressCluster solutions, especially in a more dynamic and larger environment, because you can imagine from time to time servers may be added or removed to a cluster. So with previous versions, I will require users to update the configuration to support the new configuration. With a pool definition, there's less hard coding of specific servers, so that means less maintenance on an ongoing basis. So that's the explanation and overview of all the key major enhancements. So overall, all these enhancements make it even easier to deploy ExpressCluster and support more customer environments going forward. And next, I just want to quickly go through some solutions that are especially well suited for ExpressCluster, especially with the new enhancements in Release 3. So here's a very typical deployment of ExpressCluster LAN edition for SQL Server high availability. So as you can see in here, this is a very simplified solution in that you only need to take typical standalone SQL Server running on SQL Standard Edition and Windows Edition and have ExpressCluster LAN enable mirroring to an application recovery to a similar low-cost server, and there's no requirements for any additional infrastructure to deploy the solution. So this is a very self-contained, comprehensive solution by itself. And just for comparison, if you want to deploy similar high availability solutions, so a solution that can monitor and recover within minutes with little or no data loss, you have to, using some Microsoft Cluster solution, you would require many other components and also more expensive components. For example, Microsoft Cluster Service would require much more expensive enterprise editions of SQL Server and Windows Server, and that would also require a redundant Active Directory infrastructure servers to eliminate a single point of failure within the environment. It will also require shared storage array. So if there isn't one in place already, that would be a significant added cost as well. So ExpressCluster LAN edition enables a much more cost-effective solution compared to Microsoft Cluster Services, as an example. So and ExpressCluster obviously has additional capabilities and enables more sophisticated solutions, such as a disaster recovery solution. So that's where the WAN edition comes in. So ExpressCluster WAN is optimized for deployment over wide area networks to enable fast recovery even in a wide area network over long distances. And it can still support synchronous data mirroring, but also has the ability to use asynchronous data mirroring if there's only very low bandwidth or very dynamic bursty type of network available between the sites. And building on that, you can actually implement a very comprehensive, unified, high availability, and disaster recovery solution with ExpressCluster WAN edition. So ExpressCluster WAN edition can be deployed on minimum of 3 servers and all the way up to 32 servers, if you like, across different locations. So at the primary location, you can deploy ExpressCluster WAN on 2 servers with shared storage. That enables the fastest monitoring and recovery for local high availability. So in case there's local hardware component or software failures, it can perform a very fast recovery to a local standby server. And when there is a true site-level failure, such as network disruption to the entire site or destruction of the primary site due to disasters, then ExpressCluster WAN will automatically recover to a remote site again. But in this case, the mirror data would be used to recover the workload. So this is a fully contained and automated solution for both local high availability and remote disaster recovery. So the ExpressCluster has a large set of capabilities, and you can deploy starting with a very simple configuration and expand to very comprehensive and sophisticated solutions supporting multiple servers, multiple tiers of servers for high availability and disaster recovery. So now we're about 10 minutes until the end of our scheduled session. So I think I want to open up to questions now. So please type in your questions if you have any questions in the question and answer panel on your WebEx session.
Thank you, George, very much for the presentation. I did receive a few questions that from the participants. So the first question I've got is the people are asking, ExpressCluster is software application. Does it require any specific hardware or any infrastructure?
No. So ExpressCluster is pure software, and it works on all standard server and storage hardware that are supported by the operating system. So, for example, basically Intel compatible servers supported by Windows operating system are supported by ExpressCluster. Similarly, storage systems that are supported by Windows or SUSE Linux or Red Hat Linux are supported by ExpressCluster. So ExpressCluster itself does not have any requirement for specific vendor hardware.
Great, thank you. And then there's another question came in when you were talking about the free edition for ExpressCluster. The question is, which edition should they use to enable recovery across different cities, different regions?
Right. So for that would be a disaster recovery scenario. So basically, anytime there's remote disaster recovery across different locations, that could be cities or even within the same city, but across different locations across the city, that's a situation where the ExpressCluster WAN edition should be deployed. That has all the features and functions specifically targeting disaster recovery solutions.
Great, thank you. Let me see here. There's another question came in asking if ExpressCluster support SQL Standard Edition.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned that in the solutions pages. So ExpressCluster supports standard editions of all the key applications. So ExpressCluster does not require cluster-aware application versions, for example. So for SQL Server specifically, we support standard editions of SQL Server, and we also support Windows operating system standard edition as well. So for many customers that use ExpressCluster, that is a key benefit because that lowers the cost of ownership for high availability or disaster recovery by tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than $100,000 in many cases. So ExpressCluster is very well suited for customers that have critical systems that are already running on standard editions of operating systems and applications. We can deploy on that directly, so there's no need to do a mass upgrade to enterprise editions of operating systems or application editions in order to achieve high availability or disaster recovery.
Great, thank you. You also mentioned that ExpressCluster supports virtualization. So does it support mixed physical virtual systems?
That's a good question, yeah. So yes, ExpressCluster can be deployed in physical as well as virtual servers and a combination thereof. So the popular scenarios are physical to physical. So ExpressCluster is deployed on two physical servers. One is primary and standby. And a second scenario is virtual machine to virtual machine. So that's again similar to the physical scenario, but except they're virtual. That's typically again to enable the fast recovery capability and granular monitoring capability that's available when ExpressCluster is deployed inside virtual machines. So that enables the fastest way to recover for virtualized application servers or database servers. And the third area is mix of physical and virtual. So that's also supported. So the use case for that situation is typically that there are multiple production servers, but you want to deploy high availability or disaster recovery for those production servers with minimum cost. So virtualization is a good way of doing that. So instead of implementing a physical standby server, you can implement a virtual standby server, and you can have multiple virtual standby servers running on a single physical server platform. So that way it minimizes the capital expenses for the standby server equipment. So that's definitely supported by ExpressCluster, where you can deploy ExpressCluster on the physical production servers and then deploy ExpressCluster in the virtual standby server. So the virtual standby server can recover the applications and data running on the physical production server when there is a failure or problem. So the ExpressCluster is very flexible in that manner compared to many of the alternative solutions.
Great, thank you. So for the audience, we have a couple minutes left. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel on your right side to type in your questions. And here I've got one more. How long does it take to set up ExpressCluster?
That depends really on the target application, but as an example, for ExpressCluster LAN solution, that example I showed, that can be very quick. That can be done in under an hour from end to end, from scratch to completely configured, running high availability system with ExpressCluster LAN. So that is much faster than the alternative solution that's shown in the slides. For example, the Microsoft cluster scenario, you would have to upgrade all of the SQL Server, Windows Server to Enterprise Edition, and implement the necessary Active Directory infrastructure servers, again with redundancy. And if you don't have external shared storage in place, you would also need to buy and implement that and migrate data to that for shared storage. So compared to that specific alternative, that we're talking about doing in an hour compared to days or if not weeks.
That's great. I think I have time for last question that just came in here. Can ExpressCluster detect network problems?
So ExpressCluster provides many monitoring resources. So by default, it does not monitor devices on networks that are not part of the cluster. So it monitors the primary server and the standby server, but if there are other network devices or nodes on the network that you want to monitor for connectivity, you have to customize ExpressCluster configuration to do that. So ExpressCluster does provide the monitoring resources that you can set up and configure to monitor connectivity to network devices, and when connectivity to the network devices is disrupted, ExpressCluster can be configured to perform specific recovery actions to avoid impact on the overall system.
Great, thank you, George. And I think that concludes our presentation today.
Okay, I just want to summarize. Basically, ExpressCluster Release 3 provides many very important and useful new capabilities. So much faster data mirroring and setup that really shortens the setup time. Much higher things like much higher data mirroring networks and resiliency makes it even more robust. And then all the virtualization enhancements I talked about are very helpful to ensure successful virtualization initiatives and projects. So virtualization is great to reduce operational expenses, but at the same time, if not done properly, there can be significant risk for business impact and business continuity. So ExpressCluster can help mitigate those risks. And I would encourage everyone to go to the ExpressCluster website shown on the slide here, or send any additional questions to the ExpressCluster email address on the slide.
Great. Thank you, George. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.